You've seen the photos, the infinity pool on the top deck, waiters in white jackets carrying trays of champagne across a marble floor, a floating resort the length of 3 football fields gliding across a turquoise sea. That's the cruise ship everyone knows. But there's another ship hidden inside that one. A second world stacked below the waterline that almost no passenger will ever see, ever enter, or even think about. And down there, in windowless corridors lit by fluorescent bulbs, up to 2,000 people live and work for months at a time without ever stepping into the world the guests paid for. Here's the part that surprises people. The crew aren't trapped down there by accident. The entire layout of a modern cruise ship is designed deliberately to keep 2 completely separate worlds from ever touching. One above the line, one below it. There are 3 layers to this story. The first is the hidden city itself and why it exists. The second is the cabins, the actual rooms these people sleep in, which are nothing like what you'd imagine. And the third is something almost nobody expects, the reason thousands of crew members sign up to do it again and again. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a cruise ship the same way again. So let's start with the obvious question. Where does the crew actually go? A ship like Royal Caribbean's largest carries more than 5,000 passengers and around 2,300 crew. That's 2,300 people who have to eat, sleep, shower, do laundry, relax, and live, all without being seen. You can't have a dishwasher in flip-flops walking through the champagne bar at midnight. So the entire ship is split in 2. The guests live above. The crew live below. And connecting that lower world is something the crew have nicknamed after a real American highway. On most large ships, there is a single long corridor running almost the entire length of the vessel on a low deck. It's the main artery of the whole operation. Every cook, cleaner, engineer, and entertainer passes through it dozens of times a day. The crew call it Interstate 95. Just like the real interstate, it's always busy. People move through it at every hour, in every uniform, speaking dozens of languages. It has its own traffic, its own rush hours, its own unwritten rules about which side you walk on. And the average passenger, sipping a cocktail 2 decks up, has no idea it exists. But Interstate 95 is just the road. What's interesting is the rooms branching off it, and that's where this story gets strange. Here's something most people assume and get completely wrong. They picture the crew sleeping in tight little bunks because the company is cheap. That's not really it. The real reason is physics. A cruise ship is a sealed metal box that has to float. Every cubic foot of space below the waterline is fought over by engineers, designers, and accountants. The good space, the space with windows and balconies and ocean views, is sold to passengers for thousands of dollars a week. The crew get what's left, and what's left is the windowless core of the ship, deep inside the hull, where the only light is artificial and the only view is a steel wall. So, a typical entry-level crew cabin is around 100 to 150 square feet. To put that in perspective, that's smaller than a single parking space, and it's shared. 2 people, sometimes 4, in bunk beds. Each person gets a narrow bed, a small locker, maybe a single shared desk, and a bathroom roughly the size of an airplane lavatory, often shared between 2 cabins through a connecting door. No window, no porthole. Down on the lower decks, you genuinely cannot tell if it's noon or midnight without checking your phone. And here's a detail that catches people off guard. 2 roommates often work completely opposite shifts. One does breakfast and lunch service, the other does dinner and the late bar, which means they may share a 120 square foot room for 6 months and barely ever be awake in it at the same time. The cabin is basically a hotel room that never empties out, just swaps occupants like a relay race. But not every crew member lives like this. And this is where the ship reveals its real secret. Because below decks isn't one community. It's a hierarchy carved straight into the architecture of the ship. The lowest-ranking crew, the galley staff, the cleaners, the dishwashers, live deepest in the hull, 4 to a cabin, no window. Move up to waitstaff and cabin stewards, and you might drop to 2 per room. Mid-level staff, your shop managers and entertainers, often get a cabin to themselves. And senior officers? They live in a different world entirely. Single cabins with an actual window, sometimes a small sitting area. The captain and senior officers may have suites that wouldn't look out of place on the passenger decks. So the closer you get to the top of the ship and the top of the rank structure, the more daylight you literally get to see. On a cruise ship, your job title isn't just on your name badge. It's measured in how far you sleep from the bottom of the ocean. Now, you might be thinking this sounds bleak. Windowless rooms, shared bunks, opposite shifts. But here's the part that changes everything. And it's the thing almost nobody on the outside ever finds out. Because the crew don't just sleep down there. They have an entire hidden city built for them, and most of it is off-limits to every paying guest on board. Branching off I-95 is a parallel version of the ship the passengers paid for. There's a crew mess, the cafeteria where everyone eats, often serving food from around the world to match the crew's home countries. Because on a single ship, you might have people from the Philippines, India, Indonesia, South Africa, Romania, and 20 other places, all eating together. There's usually a separate officer's mess with slightly nicer surroundings. Then, there's the part nobody expects. The crew bar. Tucked away below decks, it's a real bar, with drinks priced a fraction of what the guests pay upstairs. A beer that costs $10 on the pool deck might cost $1 or $2 down here. And after a 12-hour shift, this is where the ship actually comes alive. Crew parties below the waterline are, by many accounts, far wilder than anything happening in the passenger nightclub above. But it doesn't stop at the bar. Larger ships hide a whole infrastructure down there. A crew gym, a small crew shop selling toiletries and snacks, internet lounges, training rooms, sometimes even a dedicated crew sun deck or pool tucked at the very back of the ship, out of sight. There's a crew laundry, crew medical facilities, even crew-only outdoor space where off-duty staff can finally see the ocean they've been sailing across for months. It's a self-contained town, sealed inside a luxury resort, running 24 hours a day, completely invisible to the people it exists to serve. And that brings us to the third layer, the one that genuinely surprises people. Because life down there is hard. The contracts run 4 to 8 months with no days off. The weeks are 70 hours or more. You live in a metal box with no window, far from home, sharing a bathroom with a stranger. By every logical measure, it should be miserable. So why do so many of them come back, contract after contract, year after year? Ask a crew member who's done 5 contracts whether they'd quit for a normal 9 to 5 back home, and a surprising number will tell you no. And the reasons stop people cold. The first is the people. When you live and work alongside the same group for months, sealed off from the outside world, something forms down there that's hard to describe to anyone who hasn't lived it. Crew talk about it like family. Friendships across a dozen nationalities, formed in a place no tourist will ever see. People meet their future spouses on I-95. Entire wedding parties have started in a crew bar below the waterline. The second is the world itself. While the work is brutal, the office, on a good day, is a balcony over the Caribbean, or Alaska, or the Mediterranean. They wake up somewhere new. They send money home that changes their family's life. And they belong to something the rest of us only ever visit. So the next time you're up on that pool deck, drink in hand, watching the coastline slide by, remember there's a second ship beneath your feet. A whole hidden city, stacked deep in the hull, with its own highway, its own bar, its own rules, and its own family. The crew down there aren't suffering in the dark. Most of them are exactly where they chose to be. Now it's your turn. Have you ever worked on a cruise ship, or known someone who did? What's the one thing about life below decks that would shock people? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this gave you a whole new way of seeing that floating resort, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.